Hello, everyone. Today's podcast is the second in a series of Semantic SEO podcast where I will be interviewing semantic SEO experts, especially from the holistic SEO community, who have learned and implemented semantic SEO based on Koray's principles. And today we have our valuable guest, Gurmans. Hi, Gurmans. Thanks for your time. And I've learned a lot from you, particularly, especially with your webinars that you've conducted for the cohorts as well. So thanks for giving us a push in learning and implementing things. Just a brief introduction about Germans. He's a digital marketing professional, SEO consultant based in Copenhagen, Denmark. He's a founder of GF Marketing and currently head of SEO and content at Simple QMS, where he applies his expertise in SEO and content marketing to enhance brand visibility and have driven amazing results solely based on SEO. And I'm saying amazing results because I've seen them actually. Thanks again for joining on particularly on the weekend. I hope I won't take too much time for you, and the discussion will be very useful for the audience as well. So let's begin with a very basic question. What is semantic SEO from your point of view?
First of all, thank you very much for inviting. I think any day is the same day, so no worries at all for taking the time. Pleasure to be here and pleasure to speak about these things. I can speak about them for hours, so very happy every time there's this opportunity. To answer your question about semantic SEO, well, it's all about, let's say it's a process of structuring the website and optimizing the content on the website based on all the entities, attributes, and the context and let's say search intents that are rather than just keywords. Long story short, it is all about just structuring information on the website in a proper way. You can define it like that in a meaningful way to improve both the relevance, the let's say information retrieval, and also the responsiveness, the information extraction part from any single, let's say, part of the website or any passage of the content. There are two different things about relevance and responsiveness. Probably we're going to talk about a little bit later, but just briefly, relevance is all about matching, let's say, those terms that people are searching, but responsiveness is about how, let's say, fast and responsive you are providing that answer to the question, and also thinking also about the function, not just that you are putting the right words, but also do you have the right also predicates, of course, related to words, but also do you have the right function and the, let's say, functionality on the website to do this action that user is seeking to do.
Mhm. And is it correct in saying like the semantic SEO, which Corey has told as a topical authority concept, is mostly about top of the funnel content, or can we also replicate it the middle and the bottom landing pages or the converting pages as well, or is it just
Mhm.
top of the funnel straight away?
It's across the whole funnel. So when I kind of like describe the semantic SEO as a whole, that is based on all the entities, attributes, context, search intents, it should all cover all stages of the funnel, all user paths, the whole user journey, right? Not just publishing any type of content, not just publishing any type of, let's say, topics, not just publishing any type of like maximum volume.
Mhm.
That's not that. It should be all semantic, meaningful by definition.
Right, right, right. So this was a very actually long definition. I will definitely copy that and put it on my website as well. But let's jump into the chorus framework. I won't dig too much deep into the framework because the audience will be mostly from the community as well, so they know what it is, the elements. But from your experience, initially when you started learning it, and today, what was the difficult step in Corey's process, and how you overcome that? And is it still difficult for you, or do you think, oh, now it's quite easy now?
Maybe when learning, of course, there's a lot of. I can maybe mention the journey, how it all started after reading the first case study. I think I stopped reading it 5 times in the middle of the article, and then kind of like return maybe next week again, try to read it again, stopped again, right until the course finally came out, and then well, luckily I got. Luckily or unfortunately, luckily, I don't know. I got injured. I got a,
Wow.
like a back injury at the gym, doing some heavy exercises, and then I was just laying for like a week, and then that helped me to go through the course multiple times throughout the week, and then essentially just going through the course multiple times allowed me to understand all the concepts, all the terms, well, at least at some level. And then when reading all the case studies, it became so much easier.
Mhm.
But still, the most difficult part was really the practical aspect of it. So how do I translate all these concepts, all this theory into practice? Of course, there are many lessons that I were focusing on the practical side as well. but also you always wish to ask a follow-up question. Hey, why did you do this exactly? Can you please explain, right? If
Yeah.
we would have been next to Koray then when he recorded all of this, it would be amazing, right? Maybe someone would kind of like a SEO, let's say not a beginner but maybe intermediate person asking all these questions sitting next to him. I think that could uh,
Exactly.
answer many other questions that people might have, right? And still to this day that they are maybe asking in the communities or in the comments of the course. So
So,
how do I translate this into practice was the main concern, and then
mhm,
by doing it, really trying to create these topical maps and reading many more case studies, reading what Koray does on YouTube channel, learn,
yeah.
like absorbing all of that information, and then also, of course, talking to people that have implemented that again, kind of like clarified many aspects, and now the basics are quite clear. But now we have more elements coming in, right? How do we tie that with off-page SEO in a proper way? How do we also add the visual semantic elements that also Corey now talks about a lot? How do we, I don't know, do proper site migrations with some of those concepts in mind and many other things? That's just a natural evolution of how you would learn more of the, let's say, extended other things that are related to it.
Oh, that's great. That's great. So, do you think that you can say yourself like I'm quite apt in this field now, or are you still learning? And when you learn something within semantics, where do you go? Do you go to the patterns, or do you to go to any newsletter? Because Corey is not publishing too much newsletters these days. Mostly, it's his case studies come on social media, like
Yeah.
Facebook and LinkedIn, particularly. So, what is your go-to source for if you want to learn or improve your any skill within semantics framework?
Sure. I don't think I learned everything. I think maybe I'm just still, like many others, are scratching the surface. I think once you realize that you have, let's say, achieved some certain level of mastery, you realize that you don't know so much more. So it's never ending cycle. I think maybe at the beginning you are at the level of I don't know what I don't know, but now I know what I don't know. So now I just try to learn more of those other things, and then I realize that, okay, I don't know this and this and this, and at the end of the day, it's crazy how much I don't know. But it's just a natural way of evolution and learning. So I
Mhm.
don't think it's ever going to be done.
Yeah.
Given the way how fast things are moving, and also with I don't know AI opening all these possibilities for automating things, streamlining things, I think it's only going to be yeah one way forward. More learning, more implementation, never going to stop. But the other question that you asked also, like where do find all of this information? I think still, I love to go through the course again and again and again, and also all the case studies, all the videos that have been published just 2 years ago as well. Every time by repeating the same information, well, relearning, rereading, rewatching, re-listening the same information, you
Exactly.
kind of you it's surprising, but you get new light bulbs like
Yeah, I do the
like
same.
up in your brain. It's to this day it still happens. So I would still suggest people to do that.
Yeah.
Every time there's a new webinar coming out with Koray, why not listen to it again? I love how much he now uh, emphasizes on case studies and a little bit more deep dives into social media posts. Every day there is a Facebook post about some kind of concept, or maybe a lot of it is reoccurring because not that many things change in the framework, right? It's the same,
Yeah.
but it's
Yeah.
just reconfirmation, revalidation that okay, this works that way in this context or
Yeah.
another one, right? So still continuously learning that, and yeah, patterns helpful, especially when. I think for me at this stage and some from other people that I talk to is that if you're just starting out, if you're fully not mastering, let's say, the framework, then just study the framework. Corey did the hard work of analyzing 4,000, 5,000 plus
Yeah.
patent research papers and put into this conceptualized, let's say, framework. So just study that. You're going to be much better off than going through the patents and learning them. So that's why I kind of personally paused on the patent side. Maybe only if someone shares something, maybe even Corey sometimes shares in some sources that like, hey, there's a new interesting patent coming out, and so on. Then it's worth reading. But then again, it's all kind of like comes back to the same framework. It's validating the same concepts again and again. It doesn't
Yeah.
really change anything. So I
Mhm.
think just stick to the framework, understand that very well, study it more, and maybe read the patents that were mentioned in some of the case studies. That's just gonna give you more validation of realizing, okay, actually, it's exactly how he says it. That's how it works, right? That's the continuous kind of like light bulb that you'll probably, yeah, I'm sure you will get. At
Yes.
least that's what happens every time I read a patent. But yeah, trying to move away a little bit from the patents and more on the executional part and practical part, and maybe just learning some of the areas that are still a little bit blind, kind of like blind spots.
Yeah, no, actually, it's fascinating when you tell someone, "Oh, I'm reading patterns." You feel like I'm reading really something big, but when I started reading patterns, like I got confused, like which part should I read and which part should I not read. And by the time it took me some time to understand when Corey explained things in his old case studies or presentations, particularly he did one in Brighton SEO, and that was the thing about the query parsing thing. He mentioned a list of patterns, and I was like, okay, this is not something I can do. He has done it. Let's just read his course. And I will also say, like, if I was reading a lot of newsletters previously before joining Chorus course, and now I hardly
Yeah,
subscribe to any, because the things they say regarding Chat GPT, AI search, and everything is the same that
yeah,
we know. But we know, I it's not like we are bragging about it, but we know a bit deeper based on the concepts of how it works,
yeah.
rather than saying put a listicle short sentences. We know how to create a sentence now anyway. So it's the same thing coming quite later, which Koray
Yeah,
cracked years ago. So
exactly.
I
Okay.
always feel obliged to, like, he's the best teacher I found in my whole learning career, and always thankful to him. Hopefully, we get a chance to see him anytime soon. Okay, so one question. This is something from my side as well, which I got confused sometime while reading the case studies or listening to the podcast on Chorus framework. They say we need to try to track the query network when
Mhm.
we are trying to rank our entity and the attributes. We need to rank the query network. Then I think of, like, okay, if we are trying to rank for the query network, and if we try to rank for all the queries in the network, is it not going to deviate us from the source context?
Mhm.
I was listening to one of his podcasts yesterday with Navneet, and he gave a very good example of as a PHP developer at a query network, and he mentioned there are four websites talking for the same thing but for different purpose. So how one website can achieve an authority using the same query network but not losing its source context? So let's say a course provider, how can a course provider talk about jobs related query network or queries, but do not dilute the context going further, or dilute its own authenticity, or do not get classified as a job advert website rather than a course website? How
Mhm.
do you process that, and how do you limit the queries?
Yeah.
Just want to have your idea of how you do that.
It's all about how far do you go, how many more pages do you open
Mhm.
for that, let's say, query network. How deep do you go, essentially? Uh, I always, let's say, start with topical map, these five components creation, and I think that is the most important part. If you screw that up, then the whole topical map is going to be, yeah, bad. And then
Exactly.
following, once you complete the topical map, start executing, then probably exactly the same thing would happen what you just described, that you go out of the context and so on. So it's all about uh, for those other topics that are not super relevant to your source context but still are part of your query network. You want to mention them, maybe have a page or two about them, but you'll not go deep and process every single attribute of that one and then create, I don't know, 100 pages. So it's
Mhm.
all about, I think, yeah, going as wide as the entity's legitimate contextual domain is related to your source context. If you go outside of that, then that's the problem. And then, yeah, going again as deep as all those attributes, uh, relationships allow related to your source context again. And,
Mhm.
when it comes to those five components, I did then map them. Of course, the essential, yeah, entity intent, the source context is the first one, and then I try to map the, let's say, the sections of the core and outer section. What do I cover there? Let's say if I'm a software provider, like CRM software, whatever, then I would cover the, yeah, CRM as the main, let's say, context there, or concept, or yeah, it is a system, right? And then have a software attribute, and then go deep into every type of software that is kind of relevant to my source context, and then still cover other, let's say, concepts related to CRM, but not go deep into that each and every of that context, because then if you go too deep and have a more, I don't know, more pages related to relationship management with your customers, then you might become some kind of course provider or a consultant on how to work with your customers, right? Or like a
Yeah.
business consultant. So
Mhm.
this is all about in beginning deciding how much do you go into each, let's say, yeah, domain there. Many examples we can give, but I think it's hard in the beginning to understand because you tend to go wider, wider, wider. But
Mhm.
I think it's just all about logic and knowing when to stop, having the guardrails, and then it should be no problem. I would say always go super deep with your main attribute. Let's say software as a software provider, and then go just one level deep for everything else that is related to it. Uh,
Mhm.
Stop there. Don't go further. Sometimes if it's really far out, like so you need to cover some type of, I don't know, standards, requirements, regulations that
Yeah.
are already outside of you. Just don't create those 10 pages for each of the regulations. Just have one page and you will still cover that topic in that one page. And you don't need to create individual pages for that, right? If it's really outside of it.
Because when I made my topical map for just one area, although I had multiple, I had just apart from the core section, I had in the outer section I had just 16 pages, and I was like, am I missing on something? And then I realized the idea that I also said, and I can replicate to that, like it's good to interpret your entity and the main attribute first as deep as you can, and then the outcomes from those that you people are wanting to achieve, just made one page on it and list everything that you want, but don't go too deep so that you don't dilute the text. Because if you are a course provider, you are not job provider, so you cannot go very deep into that, or you
Mhm.
cannot guarantee that you will get this salary, but you can give an estimate of like these are the sources what they say about the salary and outcome,
Yeah.
and you can
Yeah.
also
Yeah.
link on to the other forums as well. So that gave me a bit of confidence, okay, that I'm not going very much away. But obviously, for the people's purpose, like if you get confused, the best thing is to understand the templates, the query templates that you can make on it, like versus, top, best, and stuff like that. How to do it, why, and what to do it. They can give you a lot of interaction from the traffic and the LLMs as well going forward. Um,
Example about the course provider you mentioned as well. Again, the famous saying in SEO, it depends. But in this
yeah,
case, in the context that if you're a course provider that is relevant to the, let's say, new roles and progression in your career, then it might also be relevant to cover every single job role related to that type of course. If it's a course about project management or consulting or something else, then
yeah.
and if the outcome is to get a promotion or to be a, I don't know, a manager of that type of that job function, then you could also cover all the job types or job roles, right? And then connect it to your course as the solution to achieving that role or getting that promotion.
And am I right in saying, like in that case again, we need to go for the quite prominent and the popular job titles, not everything.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Data
Exactly.
science is quite famous these days, or machine learning experts are coming these days. So if you cover those things along with the course, then that can give you a benefit or good amount of traffic as well.
Yeah. But it's very tricky to catch that trend because we
Yeah.
can only use the trend tools, right? But there's probably indexes are still not going to be developed there, so we cannot really do the other, let's say, query deserves page criteria type evaluation. So
Mhm.
it's a little bit tricky, but yeah, you're totally right. If you could catch the trend with AI, then definitely there's
Makes
going to be a good amount of traffic.
So right now, like when you speak to your any client or even in your company, I'm sure like the hype that AI has created about SEO and the content, and say SEO will be dead and stuff like that. How you tell or convince them, like follow the semantics principle and you will be safe, and
Hmm.
how you convince them politely saying AI is not something you should follow all the time. Because one post Koray did in a Slack community, and I use that in my presentation in university as well. Like if you start following AI strategies, you will lose your SEO growth as well, which you have achieved. So
Yeah.
that was something eye opening for me as well, because SEO is something that builds AI presence or give you traction by building relevance and responsiveness. But So how do you convince your new intakes or any person from a different department or maybe higher up in the hierarchy of the company?
Mhm.
How do you tell them, since obviously you have proved them, but obviously I'm asking from a perspective of someone who wants to convince his teammates in his company, what should they tell them, like this is the way to go, not a hyped thing like geo or llmo or whatever?
Mhm. Mhm. It's all, I think, about understanding how things work. But you're right that, yeah, luckily I'm in the situation where I can just show, okay, I had done zero AIO, GO, SXO, or whatever. Here are the
Yeah.
results. This is how much refers we get from all the LLMs. This is what we see in the CRM. How many leads are coming from all the ChatGPT, Perplexity, Gemini? We are tracking that. And the question I got also, what did you do for AI SEO? I said completely nothing.
Yeah.
We did nothing, and this is the outcome. But I totally agree that there are tactics nowadays, tactics that work for AIO, let's say, and those could be relevant to know and then implement some of them, but not change your strategy. Tactics are just, yeah, few things that you can maybe implement that, but the strategy, I think, still remains the same. Uh,
Mhm.
what we are studying, talking about here, and I think that's the best strategy there is. It already hits all the, let's say, AI main pillars, or AI SEO implementation pillars that must be there about, yeah, all the writing,
Mhm.
optimization in that regard, about, yeah, being the topical authority, and so on. And there are a few tweaks. I mean, and also all of these best practices that we know from AIO, not really best practices, but tactics, hacks,
Yeah.
those are based on correlations. Like what if, I don't know, so some of those are very related to listicles and long tail keywords and putting the year in the URL. These are not best practices. And hey, would you start doing those because they will maybe bring you a little bit more ChatGPT traffic in a year before the next year comes? Then you need to create a different URL for the different year, new
Exactly.
long tails, and dilute the value per page and then ruin your SEO. I would
Mhm.
not do that. Instead, just trying to follow the proper SEO strategy, proper fundamentals, and then seeing where we can implement some tactics that might currently work with, let's say, AI SEO. And then, as long as they do not hurt the actual, let's say, SEO strategy, then I would consider doing that. And
Mhm.
yeah, again, without SEO, there will not be AI SEO. That's
Exactly.
very important fundamental to understand, and understanding how do ChatGPT, yeah, let's say, present those results. When do they search? When do they not search? When do they depend on training data? And how does SEO play role in all of those areas? So showing, if you don't have the backup from the previous results and yeah, the current results, then you need to just educate the stakeholders on how these things work, so
Mhm.
that there's no hype around it. And but you're totally right that it is trending and everyone is like asking. Just recently, a few weeks ago, we had a discussion with the management, and then we decided, okay, that's actually will be something that we are going to track now going forward, the visibility with some of the tools, and yeah, we'll try a few approaches as well to try to improve that as well. But it's not going to change our main strategy, which is the same as it was last year, the year before, and this
Mhm.
year as well.
No, that's great. That's great. Okay. So moving on to the next one. It's about the internal linking. Although I asked many SEOs and particularly from the community as well, and they have different strategy of doing it. And sometimes they deviate a bit from what Koray is saying in terms of internal linking, less from the macro, more into micro context section, supplementary section, or you can implement more into macro if the page is not the root and if it's just a serial node. So what is your fixed strategy, or do you also change based on the topic or the concept or the page layout or the placement of the page in the whole structure? What is the main way of doing internal linking, number one? And the part two is one which I read in the algorithmic authorship rules, that don't put a link from the first sentence or the first word of the paragraph. But I've seen many SEOs in the community and they have worked on the website. They have put the links on the first word or the first sentence of the paragraph. So just can you just disambiguate these two and tell me how it is working and how it's
Yeah,
not working?
yeah. I think we need a follow up from Koray about mini course on internal linking, right? Because
Yeah.
I do recall those lessons and some of the case study snippets where he mentioned that we do not link from the macro. but then he doesn't really mean it that 100% of the time he
Yeah,
doesn't link from the macro, right?
yeah,
It's that it is more often than not that you will probably link more from the last 40% of the page. But then again, just like you mentioned, some of the more important pages like listicles that are just tying all the topics together, you would naturally link from the macro as well.
yeah,
And then you balance the let's say how much value does the link pass by. Of course, which one is the first link? The first link will pass the most value. Is going to be, it should be the most relevant to the topic as well. And then with the section headings, heading levels as well, from which one you link from, it's H2 or H3, H4. Depending on that, you will also pass more or less, let's say, page rank, right? But I don't have like black and white rules typically.
mhm,
We kind of educate people who are, well, yeah, currently it's me and yeah, a few other SEOs, depending on if it's a consulting side or the company where I work most of the time. Then it would be people who are doing the briefs. Those are SEO people. We follow the same rules, but yeah, and it's okay to sometimes link from the macro. It's okay to sometimes link from the micro, let's say, context, and definitely not more than one link from the section that includes a heading.
yeah.
Sometimes we do link out from the list, multiple links from the list items
Okay,
section if we need to, and yeah, of course, the basic rules of like trying to match, always matching the anchor texts, and then the at least
that's
partially matching the source, let's say, section heading to the target title
mhm,
as well. Um, yeah, but totally, I know few examples and few people who are very strong about do not link from the top, link from the bottom only.
yeah,
It doesn't always like, again, if you're writing about, I don't know, project management as a guide, right? And then probably you'll have project management for different verticals, and that's going to be part of your uh, like main content area. Then it's very okay to link to other, let's say, types of project management or project management for different other industries. And then vice versa, from each of the project management guide, you would probably link the first link to the main guide from like why does, I don't know, why is it important, but maybe then with the hierarchical structure, try to decrease the weight of that link. Um, and then the second one about the first words in a sentence, I totally believe that typically we would want to link from lower in the section once we have defined and given the answer.
yeah,
I'll scroll. It's just gonna go right to that other page and prioritize that as the main answer to the
mhm,
question. So always try to define the entity and, well, at least explain contextually, conceptually what you're talking about. What is the answer before you give a link and then make crawl or go to somewhere else. And in most cases, yeah, link within a section would be towards the bottom of the section.
perfect, perfect. Obviously, that was I had to ask another question from internal link, but since you mentioned the thing of define the entity, I wanted to ask a question on normally when we have a listicle page about benefits or top or how to do this in 10 ways, and we do a 10-way thing, and every paragraph or every method of doing that thing begins with a definition first of that concept, and then we explain it further. So when we are defining something, how do you construct the definition, like because on that concept there are hundreds of definition around, thousands I must say, or maybe more than that. So how do you come up with the best definition on a concept based on, even if you ask ChatGPT hundreds of times, it will come with a different definition of the same thing, or any AI tool. So how you how you construct the definition of the concept that thing you think is going to work going forward in the concept when you're expanding the concept as well, or you just go generically like this is definition and
Yeah,
let's
yeah,
go.
yeah. Hard to say. Maybe if we could be a little bit more specific with an example, then we could do that. But I mean, trying to be as comprehensive as possible, right? And definitely following the consensus, and then trying to just not be wrong. And then,
Yeah.
in a few lines, let's say, give the proper definition of a concept on that one page that just defines it, right? And then you can go worse, and then you can go a little bit worse and give worse definitions in all the other pages where you might still need to define it. Uh,
Mhm.
but not like every time you are mentioning the thing, you need to define it. As long as you define it in one page
Okay.
fully, comprehensively, that's fine. And then in some other pages that cover the essential entity plus the attribute, sometimes you might also need to, let's say, define it if you have, let's say, a bunch of impressions for that query when searching for that topic. Example is that you can search for, I don't know, non-conformance report. Non-conformance is it's a named an entity. Non-conformance report is an entity plus the attribute. We have a page doing well there for non-conformance, and then from somewhere from that page we have a link to the non-conformance report, let's say, and then also on the page about non-conformance we are defining what is non-conformance.
Mhm.
uh, I think there was I saw some kind of video, I don't recall, last year or 2 years ago, from Koray, saying that if you have a named it's an entity plus the attribute, first give the definition of the entity as the first thing in that article. Don't recall where it was, but yeah.
Mhm.
And when we did the rewrite of that page, of course we did a few other things as well, but like I think that thing contributed to the boost of the impressions the most. We have a, I think still to this day we have a first for the unconformance report article, we have a first in one line definition about nonconformance, then second sentence is about nonconformance report definition, and we are, once we did that change, the 3 months before and after comparison for the definition terms of non-conformance went up from 2,000 to 70,000. It's a crazy difference, but that was one thing. But also, of course, we rewrote the whole page by just giving more responsive answers instead of when looking back, it was, what is this? This does this. No, that's
Yeah.
not the answer. I need to give an answer of what is this, give a definition instead
Yeah.
of saying what does it do. Those kind of things were also probably influencing it, but I think that covers the definitive definition part as well. When to answer definition, when not to. But definitely, if you're linking before the link, you might include definition of that thing,
Yeah.
but typically you just give an answer and then link to that related page after you have given an answer.
Right. I think after this answer, I have to change my strategy as well, because I was in my article that I made, I was defining the entity attribute first and then the entity next, the name entity. Because I
Yeah.
followed some of the articles of Corey's, which he's done some work on. I think drinking water was one of them, where he defined the drinking water first and water later on. So I was
Mm.
following that methodology going forward. But
Ah,
let's see. Yeah. So I was a bit
interesting test. Huh?
so I was a bit confused. Like, should I define this or should I define study this first, or should I just define X first? So, yeah, but I will test it both ways,
Yeah.
and maybe
Maybe
something.
I am wrong. I don't know. And then it's a fluke. Who knows? But really interesting.
Okay, we'll cut this definition as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyways, so going back to the internal linking again, because this is something, obviously your conversation is also very valuable. So I will generate a lot of questions from that. As in terms of internal linking, I came across your video of content brief for the wine company that you were doing.
Mhm.
Um, and the guy asked a question like how you link back to your source context, and you showed an example after the contextual bridge, if I'm not wrong. So when you're offering your products and services, how often do you link out to your own products rather than to the next article? Or if you're doing both, which
Mhm.
one do you prioritize first, your product first and the outer sections later, or outer section articles first and product later? How do you configure that?
Um, Most likely, it depends on the website that we're talking to, but in most cases, it would be link out to all the relevant articles, related articles, right? And then at least also, if we can connect it to the source context, then always connect it to the source context at least once on that article. That's one part of the, let's say, unique engrams that you create site-wide that are relevant to your source context. That's very important.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, link logically to anything that you need to link. And
Yeah.
as a rule, always try to link to the source context if that is possible. If not, then link to the next, let's say, page that is in the core section. And then from that one, for sure, you will be able to link to the source context without inventing some weird headings, bending the meaning like crazy.
Yeah.
That that makes sense to anyone other than SEO.
Mhm.
See that you have done that on purpose.
Perfect. So that was something I struggled with as well. So that is answered now. So when you're creating semantic content, and obviously you do some competitor analysis as well, apart from the queries that they rank for. Um, what kind of information do you look into onto the competitors page while creating your content? Obviously we have our own methodology as semantic seos, but what things that you look into their content and try to improve further, or do you just sometimes think like they have covered everything, we just need to structure it better? So how do you process that, or how do you configure that writing process, or
Mhm.
instructions for the articles? How do you do that?
Yeah, yeah. I think from all the projects that I worked, I never saw a competitor that covered everything in the best possible way. So there's always improvement to be made.
Yeah.
But like you said, looking first from the queries that they rank for, and then also having a brief look on the, let's say, the main headings, and just to understand what context do they cover, and
Hmm.
then trying to include those as well, if especially if we are missing the data from the queries. So I would look at both, and then also, like you said, in terms of statistics and information gain perspective, how many, let's say, let's say, preceding questions do they answer, and so on. So yeah, and in most cases, you'll always find that there are missing gaps. There are multiple GPTs that you can use or create, right? I think
Hmm.
around the community we have multiple. I'm using a few that are helping with the content brief creation, let's say that specific methodology structure or contextual structure part,
Hmm.
where we have, let's say, main heading H2 or H3, and then after using that GPT, it will just uncover more preceding questions that are, let's say, probably implied to be answered when answering that question, and that's how we yeah cover more aspects within an answer.
Oh, that is perfectly fine. There was another thing I wanted to ask, but I forgot. Maybe later, if it comes to my mind back. Have you ever worked with any local business, or like, if you ever get a chance to work with a local business, how would you implement the semantic content network? Will it just be based on the service, or will you integrate the location as well? And how will you do both?
Yeah, trying to integrate all of them, right? The location and the service. I only have one client that we do a little bit, but from the local perspective, it's mostly national or global B2B type companies. But for local, yeah, so definitely the service, like you mentioned, covering everything about that, and then the local this local and plus service integration, that's most important one.
Mm,
If you are, I don't know, law provider, law services provider, then you need to cover the loss of that specific service law that you're providing in that location, right? Statistics, cases, all of that stuff, and then also you could cover the location specific part. But then again, it might not be necessary for all of them to open up pages, right? So it could be neighborhoods or things like that, and then you might also talk about specific statistics, I don't know, cases or whatever in each neighborhood, in the neighborhoods that you serve, and so on. And of course, the case studies and so on. That's also part of it, covering the case studies from different locations if you're serving different locations. But this is more like a, let's say, outside of the topical map type of content. But I think it still matters. This is how you show your local proximity in the eyes of Google. You
mhm.
don't necessarily need to create all, I don't know, hundreds, thousands of neighborhood and region pages,
Yeah, yeah.
as long as yeah, it all depends on if the query deserves a page. uh, so there's a lot of that type of analysis. I think that's the most challenging part in local, to know when to open a page, when not to open a page for different locations.
Mhm.
And also it could be that you don't even need to put target location if you're serving one location in your headings titles. If you just have that in the boilerplate in the schema, it will be enough. You will rank.
Makes sense. So it means like we should not be going doubling down efforts on the location, but our services, and going deeper into that. Like, I think one of the example from Koray as well, by where Oscar Wiley, he didn't go very much deep into the locations. He
Mhm.
just created
Of course,
kind of
again,
a thing.
I'll take it back. It depends on the depends on the in the on the niche and competition, of course, right? But
Yeah, yeah.
I've seen cases where you don't need to, spam with location stuff, and it's going to be fine if you have just general pages on the
Mhm.
on the service and so on, and the location is implied already based on all the other, let's say, type of content that you have on the website and the boilerplate. But yes, you're right that, yeah, for yeah, Oscar Wiley, for example. I think they have location pages for all the different optometrists.
Yeah,
A
yeah,
page template there, query template, content brief template that they follow, as I can see from the outputs there. Um, yeah, and I don't think they're covering more than that, right? It's just
yeah,
about service post location. That's it.
yeah.
Not
One
going into
And one
like.
thing that I mentioned, I'm not sure where he mentioned in the interview something, or maybe in a case study, like he was saying like the location pages content was quite similar. So what he
Mhm.
did, he changed the order of information on the page. One page the questions were up and the location information was later, and the services are up and location was later. So that's how he overcome the challenge. Of course, these are serving I think nationwide. I think if I'm not wrong. So yeah, that was something new to me at that time as well, and added more into me. Right. So, in your experience as an SEO, do you think this concept or this strategy can be implemented on an old website, like existing website, or is it just for the new websites?
It's going to be faster with the new websites. I think you start fresh. Yeah, you can play around with an EMDs or PMDs. I think that's
Mhm,
always helpful.
mhm,
But it can be achieved. Yeah, great results can be achieved with the existing websites. It's just the order of implementation probably is going to be different. I would typically start from a bottom up, kind of like from the micro semantics, macro semantics, rewriting the content, right, page by page, rebuilding and getting higher performance there before slowly reconstructing the topical map. Or in case you're completely missing some parts, let's say of the contextual domain, then of course you can go in and
mhm.
open up subfolders and then get quick results from that, as if you would open up a new domain, and then rebuilding everything else after that. But yeah, both definitely work.
So it's like if let's say if website is not hit by any algorithm update or any manual penalty or action, and they say that we will only allow you the control of core sections, that the money pages you can say,
Hmm.
and let's you can build a subfolder to populate your outer section, while the whole website is has got technical SEO issues, website speed issues. Do you think that would work? Or is it
Uh,
like
it's you're putting me in challenging spot. I would definitely fix the technicals first, right, as much as possible, and then yeah, depends if they want more money, of course. Focus on the core section, and then yeah, it's a challenging situation, but
yeah, it is.
you, but also in this situation, whatever you do is probably going to be good. So
Yeah,
just,
yeah, definitely you can
just
say.
do it. It's going to be improved. So
Right. So, and in this strategy, are there any promises like 30 days, 90 days ranking, 60 days ranking, or is it just like just wait, be patient? How do you do that?
yeah, wait, be patient. I think that's always that. Multiple times Corey said, right, you can do everything right, and then you still need to wait for like 3, 4, 5, even 6 months sometimes until multiple core updates come.
Yeah.
Historical data is being assessed, and then your website gets re-ranked. I have seen that as well from with the new website that I launched. When was it? Last year in the beginning, and then just launched a very small content network, and then the a foundational few social links from social media, and that's it. Nothing else. Fresh domain, and then for like a few months, 3 months, I think it was stagnant. Month four started to move up. Fifth, sixth really started to go jump up, but nothing was published after that. Just the first day, first content launch, and stopped. And then 4 months, 5 months in, then it really went up, and then month seven, eight, it was at the peak of the performance. And then
Okay.
of course it just plummeted down because no momentum, no links, no brand behind it, no search demand for the brand, nothing. It just was the yeah, initial content network, but it just proved the point that like how much do you need to wait, and so on. So that was a interesting case.
Hmm.
And
So let's say sorry.
sorry, interrupt. This strike money was a brilliant example of how much they waited. Same
Yeah.
exact content, wait for like I don't know 4, 5, 6 months, and then
Hmm.
all of a sudden after the second update, that they really yeah start ranking everywhere. So it takes time, and the team luckily trusted what
Hmm.
Corey said, and that was the key there to have it as to be
Right.
as it is.
Great. As you mentioned, like when you stop the momentum of publishing more content, things go drastically down or in a negative way. But what if there's nothing to publish? Like let's say you have covered everything, what will you do then? Are you just going to build your backlinks? Since you have some brand presence as well, let's say
Mhm.
you have got branded search is good volume of brand search, and you are building authority with this process, and then you got everything, and now you're done. You're just doing regular updates after every 6 7 months, or maybe after a year.
Mhm.
Uh, so how does that work? Like, since you mentioned like momentum of publishing, if there's nothing to publish, how will you survive? Is it just more backlinks and or something else in that case?
Yeah. Uh, it would be reconfiguration, publishing, republishing, and updating still. Well, yeah, counts
Yeah,
towards publication momentum if you update, and if you update majority of the page, I would just change the publication date as well, not just update date. So every, let's say, 6 months update, and then maybe every 2 years. Yeah, you can maybe make more significant change, or maybe just ignore the publish date. Just
yeah,
continuously update every 6 months. You'll get more queries, semantic distances between the topics change, new trends happen, new events happen. Hey, new virus happens, right? You don't know. The whole knowledge domain pops up. So
exactly.
these things happen. And based on that, of course, you can create new pages. I would always suggest as an exercise, just take out all the queries from the GSC, cluster them all up. You'll probably find out more topics that you rank for that you don't have a page yet for, and that
Yeah,
deserve a page. So you can always continuously create more pages. Yeah, you also need to work on consolidation as well. Sometimes it could be that you have multiple pages on a given topic, and then after that you realize that they stopped ranking some of them because Google then prioritizes domains with fewer pages on that topic with stronger pages. Then you might also need to consolidate, merge, redirect, stuff like that.
mhm,
I have seen that, yeah, multiple times. But I also believe that you can always expand, going wider, but while still trying to always connect to your source context, of course, to a limit.
mhm.
So I'm yet to get to a project where there's nothing else to publish, because by following those things, yeah, updating, it's always constant if you want to be at the highest positions as much as possible, and then let's say every year doing complete GSC query analysis, and then finding new topics that you are actually ranking number, I don't know, 50, 60, but you don't cover them. If you do that as well, there's still going to be more to publish.
Yeah, no, but as you said, like there's more to publish, and I agree with that. But sometimes you think like you have covered the most important topics being searched,
Mhm.
and now there are topics no one, maybe there's just one search, or maybe people don't even think about it.
Mhm.
Like no one will think about studying data science versus English literature. Like no one will do that comparison, or no one will do a comparison of all the jobs with a degree. They might go for specific things all the time. So in that case, obviously the
That makes
point
sense.
is just to capture the that audience, which is also minor. But again, don't you think like publishing those areas as well might again dilute your context or dilute your source again going forward? What is your take on it?
If it changes the central entity that is appearing site-wide, right, then of course,
Yeah,
yeah, it's going to dilute the context and so on. I would be a little bit careful there. But in this case, when you have very strict ontology and the things that are not changing, yeah, you're completely right that up to a point you will stop publishing, and then it's
yeah.
just a waiting game.
Because I got this idea by when I was doing the comparator analysis, and the major comparators were in the third-party websites, not in the same domain or non same industry. So there were third-party websites publishing those information for students, or where they should go for this course and stuff. And I found like their pages are just updated, but they have been the same throughout the years. And they just change the date. They don't have any stat. They just have a couple of sentences. So there, I found some
Better.
good opportunity. Like, oh, I will find the stats, and which I found some good ones from the government websites. I'm
Yeah,
just waiting for that to publish soon, like how it pops up and how it
yeah,
um, shows the improvement. And if I beat those domains, then I will say that I've done my job anyway, and
yeah,
maybe some more buy-in for a good copywriter as well in the future. Let's see.
definitely. You can do better.
Hopefully, fingers crossed. Like this is something that stresses me a lot sometimes. Since I have not implemented this so far, I'm just at the blueprint stage.
Mm.
I'm still able to publish it straight away, and that's why I have taken the ownership of like I will do it. Let me do it. Let me experiment with it. And if it worked, it worked. If it didn't work, no problem. Nothing's working before as well. So all, we are in safe hands.
Now
Nothing
you know
will.
what doesn't work, right? At least make it smarter, better.
Yeah, let's see. Right. Based on that one, when you write the content, how long till you wait to start building backlinks? Not earning, but building. Sometimes people link to you automatically. And
Mm.
do you think like a content can stay for at least 1 year and a half without backlink, or does it need backlinks to show some sustainability?
Yeah. I will, yeah, come out and be honest that I haven't really built any backlinks. Only like in the last 8 months, we have engaged in some collaborations with some people who will help us build backlinks. But until then, we haven't done that. And after the last 8 months, again, nothing spammy, just really white hat stuff. Just seeing where we can, yeah, collaborate with people and so on.
Mhm.
Um yeah, as a proper business, right? But I would like naturally or like logically, I would say do not build links to pages that you don't rank. It's not natural. So once you start ranking and so on, once you start getting some natural links, of course, yeah, you could also consider then, like yeah, intentionally building backlinks.
Right.
So,
It might be a follow-up, stupid follow-up question, but when you will be building backlinks, are you going to build for the core pages or some of the important outer pages as well, outer section pages as well?
um, outer section that are getting a lot of traffic, that are ranking really well, I think makes sense. Maybe
Mhm.
the ones that are bridging the whole thing together. There are few there are few outer section pages, right, that would like get a lot of traffic, but also then link out to the core areas.
Mhm.
So I would, you know, those, let's say, quality notes, they also live in the outer section. So I'll probably link to those more like, I don't know, categorical hubs, that are explaining, let's say, category of a knowledge domain, and then linking out to other ones. So I think that makes sense to focus on
Mhm.
building efforts there. And in general, it's just a good resource. Hey, you can reach out to someone. Hey, I have this amazing category on these type of resources, templates, or guides on this thing. I think it would also benefit if you link from your article, right, or whatever. I think
Yeah.
that's very normal to do. And then, of course, mostly then to some of the more important core yeah, pages.
Actually, I try to do that. We have some pages which we moved as a 301 redirect,
Mhm.
and we wanted to bring the backlinks to the new URL rather than the redirect one. I reached out to the people, and no one came back to me yet. It's been a year now, and that is one of the reason when we last spoke. I said I don't like backlinks. I don't like building it. So it's hard chasing them and getting an answer from them. Anyway,
It's
right?
I also don't like it, but in some niches, of course, you need to do it.
Yeah, yeah.
And yeah, uh, actively building links, right? But then again, so many things can be achieved with this just this framework. And I don't know. Don't hate to anyone. I'm also not walking here super proud. It's just how it is. I'm naturally as well. I hate that type of work.
Mhm.
And if there is a opportunity to collaborate with someone who's going to do it in a proper way, let's say white hat way, then why not?
Yeah.
But also, without active link building, we have gotten like DR 40 plus, just from four with the main website without
Mhm.
building links. Yeah, we're 30, I think, and then some yeah, bigger links or just some outreach were added, but that really boosted the R by, let's say, 5 points. But before that, 30 totally achievable without any active link building.
Right.
Um, and yeah, I think that was it. I lost my thought. I wanted to say something else.
No worries. No. Okay. Moving on to next one. Before I move on to next one, this is something came during my conversation. Do you think the AIO or GEO are the contextual domains or they are the knowledge domains? It's just a question. It came to my mind as a,
It's a contextual domain, I think.
the contextual domain.
Yeah.
Right, right, right. Okay, perfect. Okay. Considering the concepts in, I think I confused you a lot in this question as well.
Yeah. No,
Because I was thinking the same. Like, has Google got a knowledge domain based on this one now, or is it just expanding
yeah.
on SEO going forward? Because people relate to this much too much with SEO. So
I think
anyway,
it is within SEO. Should be. Right?
yeah, it should be actually exactly. Say, considering the multiple principles in NLP,
Mm.
there are many lemmatization, stemming, discourse integration, Let me see what I've written else. Lexicals, phrase properly.
Patient, you know all those things.
Yeah, that's why I say I get confused sometimes, like which one I am going to do first. So, do you use all of them in a sequence? It's a very basic question because something the NLP is something it takes me hard to understand. Or is it just like when you write naturally, be focused on entities and attributes? These things come
Yeah.
handy.
Yeah. Um, I haven't studied them thoroughly. I understand the basic meanings and the concepts of all the most important ones,
Yeah,
those that you mentioned, and then that Koray also mentions multiple times. But as long as I just understand, okay, what is the core idea behind it, and how does it reflect in writing, and that's
yeah,
it. I don't want to go and study deeper all of those aspects.
hmm,
Although I probably should and will dabble into that in the future, but currently I haven't. I'm more focused on okay, these are the concepts, and then based on these the writing rules have been developed. We just follow the writing rules and that's it. Focusing on the practical aspect of it, and yeah, so far so good. I think it's every piece of knowledge that will allow you to move closer to the implementation, just use it, implement it. Don't that spend that much more time on theory.
yeah,
So and the let's say the most basic, those I don't know 15 20 writing rules that you can find across the case studies, more that Corey also mentioned in the course, and then in some of the presentations in the speeches, you can assemble all of them, find basically make a list of the of those most important ones, follow them. All the many of these things have will be already baked into
hmm,
those rules, and then also just going to the one of some of the best projects where I was really hand holding the project and then analyzing, just like you said, drinking water article, right? Analyzing those type of articles and understanding how they're written, and then trying to make patterns across. Okay, this is the article type, this is the question answer type. What are the sentence structures there? Why are they structured that way? Then you start seeing okay, the parallels with this rule and this way of writing, and so on. The more of these patterns you can see in your eyes, then the more you're gonna let's say maybe unravel uncover more rules behind it, maybe
hmm.
specific types of lists and how they are structured. Based on that you can create a new rule. That's what we have done internally, and then just following them without going that much deeper. Maybe as an SEO you can of course learn them if you want to go really deep and be best of the best in that area, and I think we all should strive towards that. But for a proper execution, you don't need to, know that writers are not gonna need you to
Basically.
explain them, all of this. It's just about make it practical, give rules that are easy to understand, implement, and should be good enough.
Right. And when it comes to the sentence structure, normally it is said that the short sentence is possible because in the short sentence you will have less contextless words and more meaningful words that will convey the meaning. But I've seen examples again from the community web people who have worked on websites. Their sentences are like 4 lines long without any break. So how does that work? Like on the one side they say short sentence, and then on the other side it's a big whole paragraph based on one sentence.
It depends on the sentence type. Sometimes you can actually create like nested triples. If you have subject, predicate, object, and then two more objects, you can actually kind of like nest instead of breaking them down into different sentences. If you're covering, yeah, if you're mentioning, I don't know, benefits examples, then typically as one of the rules that you need to mention them as well, right? That also naturally makes a sentence longer. So it depends on the sentence type, I would say. As long as it doesn't introduce more subjects and predicates,
Yeah.
then it makes sense to have longer sentences.
Right. And do you think like without having let me think, without having the expert of those niche for which you're writing the content, you can still win with semantic SEO? Or is it like it is a requirement for having the industry experts to write the content for you?
Depends on the niche a lot. We have
Take
cases
the
where
health one aside, normal niches, let's say.
yeah, I would say if it's really a general knowledge or something that is easy to grasp, then any writer could write. For example, I have a personal passion in one kind of like area. I'm okay to write about that.
Yeah.
I don't know, marketing, business, and let's say, yeah, digital marketing, right? And then maybe working out those type of topics I could write myself. I don't need to be more of an SME as I am, as long as I understand most of the, let's say,
Mhm.
knowledge domain terms. But for example, for simpler chemists, right, we only hire special subject matter experts who have been in the industry for 5+ years, and so much easier to work with them. And we just train them on, okay, this is the type of writing we want. This is how to understand all these internal rules and workflows and how to understand the content brief. It works really well. And then we also, of course, show them as personal experts or experts in that the topic, and are not afraid of, also
Mhm.
promoting them as subject matter experts.
Right.
So I would say it really depends on the niche. Anything regulated, anything medical, anything related to really high stakes money and law and finance, I would say
Mhm.
definitely, yeah, try to find a subject matter expert. But also even like, I don't know, yeah, therapy or some kind of alternative medicine, alternative therapy type domains.
Mhm.
We also benefit from someone with yeah, backing behind it. So I'm this boring guy who just says you need to hire experts. I believe in that.
Because I was struggling with that as well, and so something which I get confused, and please help me understand that. It is said in our community like we don't want to be too unique from the index that is already built by Google. We want to have a consensus with them, and then we can go a bit extra by giving extra information gain, you can say.
Yeah.
But sometimes you see the competitors have written only 2 lines on one thing, and
Mhm.
we can write 6, 7, maybe 8 lines on the same thing with more information. Do you think that will be going too unique, or is it like more expanding into that? Or how does that work? Because sometimes you're just adding more information because you can get different sources to cite, you can get extra information based on
Mhm.
your experience. But the competitors who are ranking are solely ranking on backlinks or PR, not the content particularly.
Historical data. They have
Yeah,
historical.
yeah. So exactly. So how do you cover that? Because obviously we are not trying to be too unique, but we are adding into a corpus of data which is already there, but in a more organized form. How does that go with consensus and uniqueness? How do you manage?
Uh, I mean, I would follow the same approach that you just mentioned. Consensus first, right, and then giving more facts, connecting to more entities, and having all of that presented in a, yeah, more structured content or semi-structured content rather than unstructured content, if that is possible. Having better page layout, having yeah, less scroll depth on the page, having more let's say visuals or multimedia or functional elements on the page to just have that engagement signal. Let's say, and user satisfaction signal there. And then once you have all of those things, just, yeah, assuming the technicals are also properly done, just
Exactly.
in the process, and then maybe increase the page rank, and then
Mhm.
historical data. Once you have that, then I believe that is going to do the work. Many examples you can also I also saw that Koray a few times mentioned that, okay, here's a website on this topic with worse content, but because it has better historical data, it is ranking higher. And here, different website, we have much better content, but it ranks on page 2 because it doesn't have any historical data. So we need to wait. We need to do other manipulations and so on,
Mhm.
right, to get it higher. So that's normal.
Mhm. Right. And normally when you write content in semantics, I've seen like the content becomes long naturally. It's not
Mhm.
like intentionally. And there are some things that you can use to make it small, like accordions or tabs or different thing. But considering the functionality of AI particularly, if the those sources are being handled by JavaScript, don't
Mhm.
you think that becomes hard to get cited in the Java in the LLMs as well at the same time?
Yeah, yeah, it is. It all depends on how those components are built.
Yeah.
So definitely, yeah, I have heard also multiple times that AI just prefers blank text or text on the
Yeah.
visible on the page, right, without triggering any, yeah, pop-ups or coordinates and so on. But that's when you need to have proper rule list for different accordions or any other type of component that you're creating, uh,
Hmm.
or want to create to be sent to your developer to implement it in a proper way, without making it more challenging for crawler of any type to understand that content. As long as it is indexed in HTML visible and so on, doesn't require a JavaScript to trigger to yeah open up and then finally show that content, should be fine.
Yeah, so yeah, that was what I was thinking as well. Like rendered HTML is the main thing to look for, right? Would you like to give any random tips, not five, six, seven, 10, for the people who don't have dedicated writers, what they should follow when writing the content, and especially when they are generating the draft from AI initial and
Mhm.
then optimizing it? What are the top X things they should follow?
Mm, Try to learn the topic first, so that you could be at least at least somewhat of a subject matter or a practitioner in that topic.
Hmm.
Um, when it comes to writing and then not having too much fluff, I think creating some kind of if you don't want to write by hand, who wants nowadays?
Yeah.
Having some kind of, I don't know, project or GPT or any kind of AI tool that will just write for you in an easier way. I would always suggest, if you want to write yourself and speed it up with AI, then definitely write section by section, have your content brief ready, and just section by section really feed it to AI and almost in a sentence by sentence say exactly what you wanted to tell you. And then
Hmm.
it's just gonna, maybe, especially if English is not your first language, for example, like mine, then it would just format it better and also write in a way as I prompted to reduce the fluff and so on. And
Hmm.
then manually I would just rewrite few things to ensure that that output is aligned with algorithmic authorship rules, and also just generally makes sense, that it doesn't talk something that doesn't make sense. So all those things, I think, combined would help anyone write better content, also faster, despite not being a true expert, but still you would need some kind of expertise or experience in
Hmm.
that. What else? Yeah, I think that's those are the main things.
Right. And when you have done the article, the writer has done the article, and you do the proofreading, let's say,
Mhm.
do you run the article through any tool like Google NLP analysis to see if the entities are being mentioned properly, or do you read thoroughly everything, or and say that that's everything perfect now?
We are doing a much more thorough analysis when starting to work with a writer, but after a few months, we kind of trust and see how the writer follows the brief. If the brief is followed properly, then we don't really worry about whether all the entities are mentioned, because we can clearly see that, and after a few times, we build that trust between the writer
Hmm.
and us, and then we do proofread everything, and we have basically our workflow is that the writer sends the first draft. Actually, now we have implemented the case where we use a tool to check for algorithmic authorship rules, so that we don't have to check. But then before, it was like an SEO always checking. Okay, do you exactly follow the brief? Do you follow kind of like the rules in terms of writing to avoid the fluff and some other aspects? So now we
Hmm.
have a tool that writers just go yeah section by section, feed the piece of content through that tool, and then correct mistakes. But also, it's up for the writer to interpret those suggestions and say, okay, I think this tool is too harsh here, I will not follow it. And
Yeah.
here, I think it makes sense. This is the rule number 16 from our rule doc, and I see that I forgot about it. Okay, let's correct it, right? So we allow them to have that flexibility.
Yeah.
uh, After that, we do check, especially when it comes to our source context, because we are in some projects in a more regulated niche, we need to just double check ourselves
Hmm.
that part, assuming that all the SEO and writing rules are intact. Also, we can skip that phase, but typically we'd also check all of that, whether all the headings are aligned, internal links are aligned, anchor texts are aligned, and algorithmic authorship rules. But now we have that tool that would check that. And then lastly, all the facts and so on. We have also reviewer that would review the content as the final review step, to ensure that all the facts, all the references to the requirements, and our solution as well, for example, are properly. Uh,
Hmm.
this is the ideal structure, I would say, but
Yeah.
depending on a niche, you might need that or you might not need that. But this is how typically, we do it. Also, working with clients, we do the same. Yeah, assuming that algorithmic authorship rules are there, links are there, then also always ask the client to give SME review. Yeah, always after deliverables are sent.
Hmm. Right, right. I think we are getting too much into the content. Just one more questions from them, then we move to the next one. The abstract section of the article when you write it. Abstract is, am I writing saying right? Abstractive. The first.
Abstractive, yeah, abstractive is first when you kind of like start to define the things and so on without extracting the information and facts because you
Yeah,
haven't done anything yet.
exactly. So how long it should be? Obviously, I'm not saying the word limitations or stuff, but since we are analyzing the whole article based on that, and if the article is really long, the first section will become long as well because you cannot miss out some things. I will again give example of the drinking water website with the 12 health benefits, and they were like four paragraphs were there in the first introduction before jumping onto the benefits, and they covered Koray covered most of the things from the benefit and listicles as well, and some
Mhm.
aspects from the supplementary section as well. So,
Mhm.
how are you following the same process? Does it not make it a bit lengthy, or is it okay, or is it really important?
We follow a rule of touching upon all the H2s, but the lower the H2 is, the less important it is, right? So if it becomes super long, then of course we might merge some or
Mhm.
not touch upon the last few. But typically, yeah, touching on the first H2s in one sentence each. If we can merge them, we will merge them into, or let's say, mentioning or touching upon the aspects of two H2s in one sentence. And typically, it will not be longer than 10% of the whole content, that summary. So those are the basic rules that you follow.
Right. Mhm. Perfect. Have you done any kind of automation in the process of semantics, particularly writing? Are you using any automations apart from GPTs? Like obviously, there's a lot of GPTs in the community, but any process
GPTs, that's the gold
automation?
standard for us. We have plenty of them.
That's what I'm saying. Like, any other automations in terms of creating the outer section or process topical map or topical map or a whole article based on algorithmic authorship rules. These are the rules. Write the article based on this outline. Here we
Yeah.
go.
I have a, I don't know, a dream. I have planned on a few projects where this could be implemented. If you have a content brief template, query template before that, right, and a document template, you could just yeah, create a really nice, let's say, once automated system, very
Yeah.
similar like Spintax, whatever, right, where you have every sentence outlined, but a little bit more creative and more variable. Um, and then yeah, create thousands of page contents, let's say, with one automated workflow. That could be done, but in our case, it's we cannot really create. If also for looking at client work and so on, and what I do full time, it's not possible to automate all these things. So what we only do is just we have a bunch of GPTs that are just helping us in different stages of the process. From
Right.
topical map creation, I have like maybe uh, three, four, five that are typically being used on in different stages. For content briefing as well, we have about like 8, 10 different GPTs that are being used for generating certain parts or validating or increasing or making the accuracy better, clarity better for, let's say, headings.
Mhm.
Same with content writing, we have GPTs that are helping you optimize certain types of content, let's say, well, answer types once the content is drafted. Let's say if it's a list, then we want to optimize a list with certain elements. Then we'll optimize that list with the GPT for exactly following some of the algorithmic authorship rules, stuff like that. And then, like I mentioned, the system for checking the algorithmic authorship rules on its own. Uh, Many other GPTs for creating meta descriptions, for creating CTAs, for uh,
Mhm.
just yesterday I created GPT for helping the designer design featured images. So like
Right.
GPT that's gonna give instruction for designer on what to visualize in the centerpiece of the image, what kind of
Mhm.
elements and so on according to our brand, let's say visualization style guidelines and so on. You can create them for many things. So the approach that we're currently only following.
I was also using ChatGPT since the very early time of it. ChatGPT launched. Never tried Claude. I don't know why, because I was quite attached to the ChatGPT, and it knows what who I am, how I work. But since there's a lot of hue and cry on cloud skills, cloud cowork, so I said let's try it. So I tried the free version, and to my surprise, it was a lot better than ChatGPT. Like
Mhm.
I gave it. So what I have got in GPT, I've got a GPT which is not fully 100% functional, but it knows the algorithmic rules to follow while um, putting a critical analysis on a draft, and
Mhm.
it tells me what it is missing, and it gives me a draft as well based on the rules. So I put the same one in Claude, and it gave me a lot of more sense out of it without telling it what the rules are. It tells me this is missing. If you are trying to go for semantic SEO and these concepts, these are the things that you are missing. And that was free. That was not paid plan. And I
Right.
was like, Claude is quite clever in that case. And same, I gave it my topical map raw. I said, I'm working on these topics. Tell me what else is missing based on this target audience, this source context, entity, and stuff. And it gave me 2 3 more extra points which were based on the competitor he chose. And I was like baffled, like this is Claude is doing wonders. So I'm trying to do some testing on it. Let's see how it goes.
I'm
Maybe,
exactly in the same spot now.
yeah,
Since last week, I was like, I'm getting bombarded with cloud skills, and many other people talking about it.
yeah,
Actually, it's the goal for this weekend to. I have many bookmarks saved about Cloud Code. I will go through many courses and just install it and
yeah.
start playing with it now. I also
Yeah,
got
definitely. I think if we could train Claude skills, it can do a better job than ChatGPT.
I heard
So
the same among many people. Yeah,
yeah, do let me know. Do let me know your feedback as well, so I can also push myself in, because I find it quite hard to focus on one thing at a time. I get baffled away when reading something. Oh, let's go deeper a bit more into it,
yeah,
and the first thing goes all the way on the side.
yeah.
Right, right. So I think we are almost at the end. I really love the discussion, and I never knew it's more than 1 hour now. What advice would you give to someone who is thinking of a career in SEO, or do you think like no, it's too late to start SEO as a career now, based on the advancements? What do you think?
I think it's never too late, especially with let's say yeah, semantic SEO and the framework that we are following. I think 1 year of complete dedication and like 6 8 hours of work a day, you can
Hmm.
become really good in 1 year. Even like from with a basic or even none SEO knowledge in 1 year, you can get to a really good level if you just put every single hour of your life that you have in a day to that.
Yeah,
I think that's possible. So never too late, I think. Especially nowadays, I think it's only getting more exciting with all the tools. You have less barriers to entry, and you have so many more opportunities to expedite many things. Despite that, I said nothing can be automated. No, but many things can. But in again, in some areas, on more operational areas, it's very hard to automate, depending on the let's say the processes that you follow and the industries that you're in. But in many other areas, like from coding to audits to strategy, many things could be sped up
yeah.
in a crazy way. All the admin stuff as well and
So,
whatnot.
so do you think like AI will, in the coming years, the way it has helped human being more efficient in the task, will it going to replace? I'm not. I don't care about other humans. I care about SEOs. Are they going to replace SEOs? Do you think, based on how the market is shifting and the speed of the works, agentic workflows and stuff like that? How do you think it where it is moving today?
I don't think so, but I wanna believe that like people who are not gonna implement let's say some of the more advanced strategies, and people who are not gonna be utilizing the tools that we have access to nowadays, and be open to more new tools as they come out, experimenting, then those people are in trouble, right? So we don't need to fear AI. We need to fear the people who are going to use AI if we are not going to be using them ourselves. And if yeah, anyone listening to this podcast and is aware of what we are talking about,
Yeah,
we don't need to worry about uh,
yeah.
that
We don't
much.
want to go Curie fan out on this topic. Just leave it there.
Exactly. Right. So I think it's good, but yeah, we just need to keep up to date with all these things.
Right. Right. Actually, I'm very bad at something, remembering things. I forgot a question which I had to ask initially. If you don't mind, um, once you have done everything, the published content, everything, are you going to repurpose the same content for the social media or the other marketing platforms, or is it like just website? Is obviously I believe website is not the only source now.
No,
How
exactly.
do
Yeah.
you use that? Let's say you want to publish the same thing on LinkedIn for a B2B customer. Are
Mhm.
you going to use the same content, or are you going to use some chunks out of the main copy and link out to their website? How do you do that?
Depends on the resources, on whether you have people to, let's say, create, maintain the strategy for every single social media platform. I
Yeah.
think just you can just do it for SEO reasons, for faster indexation, for a little bit more, let's say, links and let's say associations with your brand, with your web entity, with other, let's say, web entity presentations across other platforms. You can
Hmm.
just have a simple, I don't know, an antenna automation that every time you have published something on the website, you just have a
Goes all
short
the way.
summary, image, and so on, and then link to that specific websites as a post in all the social media. You can do that. That's an easy one. That's going
Hmm.
to give a little bit of an SEO benefit, right? But it's not going to help improve your socials. It's not going to drive audience. The content is going to be probably very dry. Although you can do cool things with workflows, with different post types, with adding some kind of angle for each post. It depends how complex you want to make that workflow. So I think good posts with these type of automations could be done. But ideally, in a proper company, you would have someone responsible for a strategy
Yeah.
for all the social media platforms, right? And then you would have unique strategy for that. Someone is going to be testing what works better, what works worse, and
Hmm.
then they have people, personal brands behind those social media accounts, right? Sharing their stories. At the end of the day, that converts better than just yeah, hey, read our article, uh,
Yeah.
and yeah, all of that should be done helps, and I think. Well, I can also share that we are doing a mix of that as well. For example, on LinkedIn, we have a person in charge there for the whole strategy, and many other people across the company are integrated into that strategy to post from their accounts to create more buzz about our, let's say, brand and so on. And also, we are beginning making posts about the people from the company page as well. And also, part of the strategy is also linking out and then to those articles that we are publishing as well. So it's only part of the strategy, it's not the whole strategy, because the whole strategy should be more advanced, should be more unique to the platform that you're posting from. That should how it should be, and then it will help. Yeah, and if you can do it across all the social channels where your audience is at, then the better it is.
Perfect. Perfect. And lastly, since Koray has said like he's going to launch two more courses in June, what do you think? Is it going to be a valuable resource in addition to semantics, or is it going to be a new learning curve for us? This is that.
Um, Depends how tight you are with all the posts that he's making recently, and
Yeah.
how good at spying all the projects you are
Yeah. Yeah.
and dissecting them. I think for people who have been studying his stuff for the last few years, it's going to
Yeah.
be not so much difficult to grasp, but
Yeah.
I think it's still going to be very valuable. Like everything that he says, post, it's like, oh wow, wow,
Exactly.
makes sense. That's what you kind of keep telling yourself every time you consume any type of content from him. But definitely, I think it's going to be valuable. Especially, I love the for example, visual semantics. Right? It's always honestly for me like 2 years ago, it was a big challenge. Now with many examples from his post and so on, and some tidbits here and there about these kind
Yeah.
of concepts, you kind of understand. But before, it was always a challenge, like with all these blocks of text, how do I put them up
Yeah,
on a landing
exactly.
page
Yeah.
for a service? It's a disaster, right? But now you have a clear blueprint,
Yeah.
examples, and it
Mhm.
makes total sense.
Mhm.
You can do a before after the website with this implemented versus not implemented. It's a crazy difference. Then also other stakeholders in the company are happy with you, the product team, the brand team, that
Yeah.
you're not just an SEO that adds text, you're also thinking about other things, UX and UI, right? And
Exactly.
also, I think it as an SEO, it increases your value a lot. That you're not just giving, okay, these are the keywords to put, the
Yeah. Yeah.
text to add, but you're actually thinking about, okay, from the user experience and so on, all of these elements should be also there. These are instructions. And it's not just a content brief, it's like a whole page design product brief that you're delivering to the client or,
Definitely.
yeah. So it's very, very valuable. And then finally, the algorithmic authorship rules. So
I am excited for that, to
for
be
that
honest.
as well, right? It's finally going to be the black box of all the people who have been extracting from different case studies,
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
someone got 100 rules, someone had 50 rules, someone has 20 rules.
It
So
will
how
be
many
8 days
are
from
there?
now.
Correct, it's 200.
I'm gonna put that course straight into cloud skills. I said, just
Uh-huh.
do it straight away.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, but anyways, it was a really interesting conversation. I thought it would just go from question to question, but it just moved into different areas, and I love the way we got into different technicalities and have some agreements, a little bit of disagreements, not disagreements, but different ideas on how things should be working. I will definitely use this for my learning as well, and I hope the people will learn a lot when they will see it. Lastly, thanks again for your time, especially in the weekend. And I hope to have more time of you soon before the course launches, or maybe after the course launches, and see how we can discuss that going forward. And perfect. Thank you so much, Gurman. You have a lovely weekend,
Thank you
and
much.
looking forward to learning more from you as well in the future.
Likewise, loving what your stuff, what you're doing, and looking forward to how this podcast also progresses, and
Yeah,
seeing you more active in the community going forward. I think
definitely.
always great to see.
Yeah,
It was a
thank you.
pleasure and a good
Thank
chat.
you. You too. Bye bye.